Welcome back to Champion News Talk Radio. We are brought to you by championnews.net. This is Carol Parisi. Our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have Lennie Jarrett. We're discussing the lame duck session and all of the dog and pony show, breads and circuses, gay marriage, guns, the feel-good legislation. What is Illinois' biggest problem? It's our pensions.
Right.
How much debt do we have because of these pensions? How come this has not really been their area of focus?
They talked about a little bit. They did get into a little bit here on the pension plan. Their pension plan that they brought up had some good points to it, but the analysis of it showed it was only going to save like 28 to 30 billion dollars of their, well, of the $1 billion of the over 100 or 200 billion, depending on how you calculate debt we have. The biggest problem with the debt plan they had, I believe this was worked out between Elaine Necritz and Tom Cross. The biggest problem with the law, and the reason I think it finally got killed, was that for the first time, the state would have guaranteed the pension payments to the state pensions. Right now, those state pensions are still separate entities. They can now go bankrupt. And I think that's what's got the unions the most scared, is because they understand that problem, that these pension funds can go bankrupt, and they're trying to get the state to guarantee them, so that cannot happen. So that's actually what ended up killing that and egos with Cullerton.
There's a technicality in what you're saying that's very interesting, because they now realize that the pension funds themselves can go bankrupt.
Right.
But what they were relying on is in the Constitution, went in way back in
1970, yeah.
1970. It said one sentence in the whole Constitution applies, but the sentence says that pensions, because it's a contract, shall not be diminished.
Right.
And so they're trying to say, well, the state's guaranteeing it. Well, it shall not be diminished, but it doesn't say who's going to pay for it.
Right.
And it comes down to it, it's the pension funds themselves that are just a financial creation. Right. They can go bankrupt.
They can go bankrupt.
And the state does not have to take the place of the pension fund.
Right.
So that is starting to scare them.
It should scare the younger teachers the most.
It is way it should be handled.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. Are they trying to pass a law that it's going to pass, that it will go to the state?
That's
what
they're...
will be the
guarantor of the...
That's what Madigan is already doing.
That's what they're trying to push.
Last year, Madigan passed $3.7 billion bill to bolster up the pension thing. He was pretending to accept that the state was liable for the whole thing instead of letting the bankruptcy happen to it. The big thing wrong with the pension thing is they're talking about the people that are presently working. They aren't doing a damn thing about these outrageous things.
Right.
Read this book.
Read
it
that
is
book.
Plenty outrageous, the pensions that they got going
44,000,
right now.
over 44,000 people make more money retired than they did while they were working. That's unsustainable.
Right in this book, $170 billion of deficit in the existing pensions that are out there now.
Right. It's
That's
actually
what
over.
they're ignoring.
It's actually over. If you look at the actual TRS itself, it's over $600 billion between now and 2045.
$600 billion?
$600 billion.
It's a half a trillion. That's more than a half a trillion with the T.
Yes.
It's
unpayable at either level, and Madigan and them are just wallowing around trying to pretend that they were going to shove it back to the school districts.
Right.
That has been totally an impossible thing from word one, and that they would even pretend that a solution
that was
show you how
off.
bankrupt they are.
The pension shift, so-called pension shift back to the local, it was taken out of this thing to try to get some votes, and they left Chicago out of it. The Chicago schools and the Chicago retirement systems was also left out to try to get more votes, but it still died. So
there was an earlier one, giving Tom Cross a certain amount of credit. There was an earlier version of this thing that did have some sensibility,
yes,
as was found in it by Bill Zettler, the guy that really wrote this book.
Was that the one with the 401k? Was it the SB? What was that?
Well, there's been several plans, but yeah, it was changing the COLA from being compounded, removing the medical insurance from being paid for. There were some other issues. The 401k is the plan that a lot of people keep pushing, but politically, you can't get there from here. That's the problem. You can't get to a 401k from where we're at this point. And they're not really discussing that really a lot at this point, at least in the legislature, they're not.
But why not?
They have run them, listen, they've run tons of money into political action down there. Madigan and the Democrats have bankrupted the state of Illinois worse than any other state.
Yes.
That's the collar they got to wear.
Yep.
When what do you got here? A picture of?
Yeah.
Talk about this thing. This guy says the people have spoken. Well, the people have spoken here in Illinois, as interpreted by Mike Madigan. We're bankrupt, folks.
Well, this is a pathetic little piece that I received in the mail. It said, the people have spoken. The American public supports President Obama's plan to responsibly reduce the deficit. So this came in my mailbox. I was so mad I wanted to call them and say, excuse me, I spoke and I wanted him the hell out, excuse my French. And the same thing with Illinois.
With Illinois.
It's the same, we are the same. We are the microcosm of the...
Yes, they're using the same tactics. Wasn't
I'd
Tim
write
Gaitner
Obama a letter about this, but I don't know how to spell.
Yeah. Well, the same thing is happening at the National. Tim Geithner just announced he wasn't going to make pension payments for like 2 to 3 months. Same thing we've done it here in Illinois. It's going to start to bankrupt the
These
system.
guys are mired down in debt they don't know how to handle.
Exactly.
But it happened over the years by the misrule of Democrats dominated by Mr. Madigan and incidentally his daughter, adopted daughter, the
Attorney General.
Attorney General. They've really got a strangle grip on the politics.
The audacity of inefficiency. We are going to be back when we talk about this more after the break.